Okay, I'm going to bring the meeting to order, and Ms. Benson is going to give us the invocation and the pledge.
Please join me, if you will. Dear Lord, we thank you for our community. We thank you for those who serve this community, for those who have served this community, and mostly we thank you for the life and the service of Barry Tweedy. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. We move now to adoption of the agenda. Do you have any additions? Ms. Benson,
Oh, sorry.
do I have any additions, or I've got a few to add. One is efforts to hire drivers and day labor for sanitation. Number 2 is CAC email addresses. Number 3, fiscal year 2022 budget. Meeting plans. Number 4 is $2,500,000 approval for the Bluffs project by the legislature. Number 5 is asking our lobbyists for help with money for Purple Pipe. And the last one is a East Tank update. That's it. Anybody have anything else? A couple of these are Bruce is going to talk to us about. If not, do I have a motion, Dale?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, where are you putting those on the agenda?
Well, let's see. Unfinished business will be hire drivers and day labor. Unfinished business, CAC email. New business would be 2022 budget and $2,500,000 approval for the Bluffs project and asking the lobbyists for Purple Pipe. And then unfinished business would be East Tank. So it'll be N ABC and O ABC.
I'll move to the agenda as outlined.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Yeah, Mr. Brown.
I second.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anything to add for the agenda? Okay, thank you. Please vote. Everybody, make sure your green button is lit up.
Or the red
Or
one.
the red. Controversial agenda. Thank you, and it passes 11-0. We move now to open forum. And we have a presentation of a plaque honoring Mr. Barry Tweedy. I have one speaker that would like to speak first, and then I think probably the board will want to speak as well. Can you want to come up, Mr. Larry Walker? No? Wait? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead then and do the presentation. And I think Mr. Tweedy's family is here. If they would like to come up to, I'm going to call it Mr. Tweedy's seat. I'm going to do the presentation. And then I'm sure that they're all right. And if there's family here of Mr. Tweedy, there are also welcome. This is his seat, so this is where the plaque will go. We have a plaque that says the same thing as this.
Chairman Campbell? Chairman Campbell? Can we move, we want to be sure that this is captured on audio. So I have a concern for the, thank you for consideration.
But I just wanted you to see where it's going to go, is where he was always sitting. Mr. Barry Tweedy was a patriot who lived his life with passion, dedication, serving his country as a member of the U.S. Army, the National Guard, and the U.S. Navy. He was driven by his love of country, the ECUA, and his family. A former ECUA Citizen Advisory member, Barry Tweedy exemplified those who make a difference in our country, our community, and our democracy. We dedicate this podium to Barry Tweedy to honor his devotion to free speech and enthusiasm for the honest exchange of ideas in shaping public policy. In memory of Barry Tweedy, July 18, 1952 to January 4, 2021, the Emerald Coast Utilities Authority.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
You want to get some pictures of them with the flag?
What?
I'll take one with you and then I'll let you get one of your favorites.
Great. Great, I'm videoing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all so much.
You're welcome. Say anything you want to say to the board, and then we're going to have some speakers, I'm sure, so.
Just a short, thank you all so much. This would mean so much to him, and if he was here, he would have us all down looking at it if you had done it, believe me, or the rest of the family would be here as well. But y'all meant so much to him, and you enriched his life so much. And to have something dedicated to him, not only just as a token, but something that's lifelong, that will remain here, and that would mean so much to him. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Mr. Woody.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tweedy and family, for coming to share this special day with us. And I believe we have one speaker, Dr. Walker, who, when I first met Barry, he was running a race against Dr. Walker, and they were the friendliest opponents I've ever met in my entire life.
Madam Chairman, my name is Larry Walker. I live at 9245 Woodrun Road, Pensacola, 32514. It's a pleasure to see those of you whom I've known before as part of ECUA. I'm amazed at how few of you there are on this committee. I didn't expect so much turnover. Mr. Kimball, Ms. Chenier, I never got that right. Nice to see you again. You must feel very old and grayed now to have all these rookies serving on the committee. But change does occur, and change can be better, that can be good as well as bad. Barry and I were perhaps, as was said, the friendliest opponents, political opponents ever. We did run against each other 2 or 3 times, I'm not sure of the exact number, for the ECUA District 5 seat, and we always managed to do so without animosity, and in fact with a great deal of ever increasing familiarity and friendship. I have photographs of when Barry and I were making speeches together at Tate High School on the football field. At Tate High School, back in the days when they actually still had outdoor political rallies with candidates making speeches. This was probably 1992, I'm guessing, and we were there, both of us there in the picture. I was a political science professor before I became a politician, so I know a little bit about the history of American government. I know that our founding fathers, such as Madison and Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, said that as they created a democratic system of government, they said that it required a particular kind of citizen to make this democratic system of government, or Republican system as it was also used, work. When the Constitution was written, at the end of the Constitutional Convention, another member of the convention asked Benjamin Franklin, well, what have we made, sir? And his answer was, a republic, if we can keep it. And it takes a special kind of citizen for a republic to work. It takes citizens who, on the one hand, would be aggressively vigilant in making sure that those politicians don't screw people over. And on the other hand, it takes citizens who have the humility and the patience to not jump to bad conclusions too quickly, to not assume that every politician is corrupt. One of the benefits of this committee that several of you serve on now is that people who served on this committee, and I've heard some say it, people who have served on this committee have had the opportunity in past years to learn that government could be done well. It could be done honestly and humbly and correctly, as well as done wrong. That they really came on expecting to see bad things, and over the years were pleased to learn that they didn't see those bad things as members of this committee. Well, Barry Tweedy was one of the outstanding citizens in the old Jeffersonian, Madisonian, Hamiltonian sense. He was one of those outstanding citizens who did follow government, who did pay attention, who was vigilant, who didn't mind calling a spade or a diamond if he saw the need, but who also was willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not leap to bad conclusions, who could be encouraging as well as vigilant in watching what elected officials do. America has precious few of those types of citizens. At ECUA over the past 25 or so years, Barry was really the only one. He was the only citizen who faithfully came to our board meetings and our committee meetings, and he was just as informed as any member of the CAC ever was. He was a wonderful citizen. ECUA is a lesser organization because of his loss, and I just wanted to say that I appreciated him very much always, and I do to this day. Let's all try to remember that we all need to be good citizens in the Barry Tweedy mold. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Do I have anyone else wanting to? Yes. Mr. Perkins. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Benson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming, Dr. Walker. We appreciate it. We know how close you were to his. The members of the CAC heard my remarks in, I guess it was January, memorializing Barry Tweedy, and I felt them sincerely, and I shared them with his wife and told her about what we were going to do. But as Dr. Walker observed, many of the people that are here today did not know Barry Tweedy, and I thought it was their loss. And I wanted in the remarks to set the tone for who we are, and who we are in many ways is who Barry Tweedy was. He was the kind of man who served humbly. He was informed. He never raised his voice. He was sincere in his love for this organization and for wanting the betterment of it. And I think he symbolized what we all seek to do in memory of him. And I won't repeat all of that, but when I communicated with Mrs. Tweedy, and she emailed me back. She said, I need to wait a while because every time I hear his name, I'm a blathering idiot. And I thought, you know what? It's fine for us to memorialize him, and we will always remember him. But I think all of us want one wonderful person in our life to be that blathering idiot who misses us every single day. We share that, Mrs. Tweedy, and we are so honored to have been a piece of his life. Thank you for sharing him with us.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. Dale, did you want to?
Yeah, Mr. Tweedy was awesome. I loved Mr. Tweedy. He and I often agreed on issues, which made it even nicer. But one thing I like about him is you get a lot of people who get involved in government and are real active when they're a candidate, when there's something in it for them, and they'll be out there raising all kind of cane about, oh, this is such a huge problem, we need to address this and this, when they're a candidate. Oh, the water's bad, we got to do something, we're giving people bad water, Then the election's over, and all of a sudden, the water's just fine. If I thought there was a bad water problem when I was a citizen, I'd be up here just as much as forever. I'd never let that go. But you see a lot of people who are interested in policy when it's something in it for them. And it was refreshing to me, very refreshing, to see a person who really cared about policy, kept himself informed, and provided input to make a difference in the policy. And so that was one of the things I admired about him. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize here that are on this committee that never met Mr. Tweedy is he was handicapped. He was in a wheelchair. It was not easy for him to get to these meetings. He had to get himself here. He had to have help. He had to, just getting through the doors on a building like this a lot of times is a challenge. But he never let that slow him down a bit. He was always active, always outgoing, and always participating vigorously. Despite being in a wheelchair, a lot of people are too lazy to get off their couch, and able-bodied as they can be, and won't come down and participate in local government. So it was nice to see that. The one thing I probably liked most about Mr. Tweedy was his sense of humor and his personality. He could state his position, be opposed to you in every way, and the decision either go his way or not his way, and laugh and joke about it afterwards, and be a kind and loving person. And a lot of people, they lose on an issue and they're bitter for years, but he always kept it civil, and provided well thought out. A lot of people will come in here and they'll make absurd statements. They've done no research whatsoever, and just say things that are just completely off the mark. And when he came and he spoke, he had researched the stuff. He had read it. He knew what he was talking about. So you would listen to him because you knew he knew what he was talking about, and you knew that he wasn't way out on the fringe on either end. He was a rational person who did things based on the issues. And in closing, the one thing that I like most, and that I'd say most about him, is that he had an impact as a citizen. He would come in here, and sometimes when he spoke and he stated a position, we would change our minds and we would change our positions. And his name on that podium, I think, is symbolic of the people who come here and can have an impact on our decisions. So I think of no better place for that dedication to be than on that citizen speaker's podium.
Thank you, Dale. I met Barry Tweedy the first time I ran for public office was, I think, the last time he ran. And like I said a few minutes ago, it was the nicest two opponents I'd ever seen in my life running against each other. He and Dr. Walker and me and Mr. Fink. And nobody was shouting and calling names and talking bad. And I thought, wow, this is the way it's going to be. Have times changed. But he was so wonderful to be around. My cousin's daughter is in a wheelchair as well, and I had a lot of questions that I didn't want to ask Tara, but I didn't mind asking Barry. And Barry would spend an hour with me after the meetings talking about what I should expect next and what my cousin should expect next for her daughter. He was such a giving and wonderful human being. And like Dale said, we agreed on most everything. But listen, when he didn't agree, he would also stand out there and wait for me to come out that door. And he would say, Vicki, I didn't agree with you on this, and here's why. And he would take the time to explain it to me. You know, for an hour, he would sit there and talk to me and tell me why I should think the way he thought about it. And many times, like Dale said, I would change my mind and I would go from the CAC meeting to the board meeting, and I would vote the way Barry told me to vote. And it was almost like E.F. Hutton, you know, when Barry Tweedy speaks, people listen. So it was wonderful. And I really am glad that Ms. Benson thought to do this today. And I'm very happy that Dr. Walker came and spoke about Barry. And I'm very happy that you came, Ms. Tweedy, with your family. It's a wonderful day. Thank you very much. Okay, whew, that was hard to get out. We move now to item E.
Ms. Campbell, even though Mr. Tweedy liked to stay for our meetings, his family might not
Might
share
not.
that. So if you want to give them a moment, if they would
If you would like to go ahead and not listen.
I do hope he
Thank you
trains
again so
somebody in his
much.
footsteps, though.
I'll take a picture of this, Ms. Tweedy, when it gets put on the table as well. I think Natalie's out. Is that right? Oh, she's here? Yeah? Okay.
She's outside with the family.
Okay. Jim, I'd like to see if we could get the News Journal to do something about this in there, about the presentation. If you and Nat could help with that. Okay, we move now to item E, approval of the minutes. They are on page 6 of your agenda.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Might check with northofscambia.com too, because that was kind of his stomping ground.
Yeah.
That might be a good venue for that.
That'd probably be a better venue for that, as a matter of fact. Thank you, Dale. All right, Chuck,
I'll move for approval of the minutes.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Do I have a second? Mr. Brown?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Please vote. No further questions, please vote. No corrections. And it passes 11-0. We move now to item F, adoption of General Resolution GR 21-21. It's on page 10. This is a general resolution authorizing the acceptance of bid and awarding of a contract, authorizing the executive director to execute a contract with Chavers Construction, Inc. of Pensacola, the low bidder of $115,710, to install a low-pressure force main for the Miramar Drive low-pressure sewer expansion project, authorizing transfer and use of funds. Do I have a motion to get this on the board? Ms. Benson?
Move the approval.
Thank you,
And I have
ma'am.
a question, too, after.
Okay,
I'll second it.
thank you. Mr. Kimball? And your question, Ms. Benson?
Yeah, I assume it is not, but I just want to check. Is this one of the neighborhood-initiated sewer expansions? Because there was sort of an implication. And if we could get Mr. Hayden to come to the podium, because I think it would be worth the committee hearing
he
what
can.
a neighborhood initiated sewer
He
expansion
can,
is.
yes, ma'am. And while he's coming, I will let you all know that this came to me when I was walking door to door. And I talked with one of the neighbors, and then we got together afterwards and had a meeting with the neighborhood. And what is dear to my heart about this one is that these properties are on Perdido Bay. So, Mr. Hayden, if you will.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Campbell, Mrs. Benson. The project was not a normal neighborhood-initiated sewer expansion project, so no, it didn't go through that normal path. As Ms. Campbell explained it, customers contacted their representative, and that's how it came through to us. So I think it's a pretty good project. We've got 8 customers out there, low pressure. They all know what they're getting as the end product and what they'll be required to do to connect to sewer.
And if I may follow
Yes,
up,
ma'am. Please continue.
Would you just sort of outline briefly to the committee what a neighborhood-initiated sewer expansion is?
Okay, so a neighborhood-initiated sewer expansion project, few customers would, contact their board member and say, hey, we want sewer. Well, there's a minimum participation. I believe that number is 60%. If they reach that threshold, then it comes up to the board for consideration. And then I believe there's also a cost per connection amount that and I'm not sure what that is. I apologize very much. I'd have to do better on that. We haven't typically had we haven't done a neighborhood-initiated sewer expansion project in quite some time. Typically, we don't reach that 60% threshold, which is the main reason. But it's a program that's out there. A lot of folks don't take advantage of it because it does cost some money to the customer to do that. I'm sorry, I'll try to get you the information on the cost per connection threshold and all that. Now, information is available on our website, but you're looking for more information from me, and I'm sorry I let you down on that.
That's okay. Go ahead, Ms.
And
Benson.
it's really fine. I just wanted the CAC members to be aware that there was that program, and they can look up the specifics. It's just nice for them to know. But thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy. That's Mr. Williams. Ms. Ritt's name is still in there.
So this was not a neighborhood initiated
Well,
program.
it kind of
I
was,
I
but
can-
they contacted me, and then we went and talked to all of the neighbors. So kind of was a neighborhood initiated.
So if I may, it's not a neighborhood-initiated sewer expansion program in the sense that it is an ECUA type of a program, but yes, the residents, the neighborhood did initiate this sewer expansion project, so there's maybe some confusion there. It didn't fall under our typical program, but it was neighborhood-initiated, yes.
Okay. And I guess the last question is maybe directed this towards Mr. Woody, if I can. That who signs it versus sometimes Mr. Woody would sign a general resolution versus the general counsel. What makes that different?
I'm sorry, I only heard most, but not quite all of what you said. You're asking about who signed it?
Yes, sir. It said it was approved as to form by ECUA General Counsel versus, in many cases, your signature would be the first one attested to the document.
The format of every resolution is twofold. The front part of the resolution is the actual legal document that the board is passing, and every one of our resolutions is reviewed by our legal counsel, and their signature, approved as to form, says that it follows the presentation and format of that's legally needed for the purposes that it's intended to serve. If you flip on the next page, there you will find the remarks, and there's where you have signatures from staff, myself included. Always have two signatures there. One, the person that it's submitted from. Generally, that would come from, like in this particular instance, it came from our engineering division, so Mr. Stacy Hayden. Sometimes one of his staff members may also be a signatory. So you have some idea of who the project manager, what department it's coming from. My signature is always on there too, so that you know that I've reviewed it, approved it, and in endorsing its submittal to you for consideration.
Thank you. I do see that on the second page of the resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins?
Well, do a little bit of explaining here, because I think the question that Mr. Williams really wants to ask is, how do I get some of that in my district, you know? And so let me help with that.
That's good.
Let me help with that. You know, and there is some confusion, because we passed a policy a while back called a Neighborhood Initiated Sewer System Expansion Policy. That policy to get a sewer system in is pretty arduous. It requires a lot of buy-in from I think it's more than 60%, but from a good number of the residents there, and they also have to contribute quite a bit financially to it. And so it happens, but it's rare. But a lot of times, a neighborhood will initiate contact with a board member, so it's quote-unquote neighborhood initiated, but it's not the policy.
Right.
They'll contact the board member, they say, hey, we really need sewer here. The board member will meet with them, and there are certain criteria that we developed our sewer system expansion program on. Those criteria are adjacent to area surface waters. So if you look at this, I mean, there couldn't be more adjacent to area surface waters than this one is. Another criteria is impact a public water well supply. So if it's in an area where the well is drawing water and there's septic tanks intruding into that area, there's probably a pretty good chance you're going to get that passed for your neighborhood. And another criteria is impacting public health and safety. So if you've got a neighborhood that's heavily populated, the septic tanks are leaching, and there's basically raw sewage fluid on the ground, and kids are running around barefoot playing in that, there's probably a pretty good chance you're going to be able to get something done about that. But it's based on those criteria, not just because, you know, Mr. Joe, big political contributor, lives down that street and he wants it. You know, we have criteria set up for it that we do it. And so that's what they mean by by it can be neighborhood initiated through a board member, but it's not a part of that policy that we've titled Neighborhood Initiated Expansion Policy.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I've been over here trying to write notes to try and keep up because I had the same questions as Mr. Williams. Is there a way that we can get a copy outlining how that process works and the criteria necessary?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Just wanted to thank Mr. Perkins. He's always willing to make sure the new members of the board are clear on policies and maybe not being able to articulate exactly what we mean, but to bring the explanation so we know how the program works better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dale is very good at reading our minds and articulating what we are trying to say. And in the case, I always try to get tell them that we need 75% of the people in the subdivision to agree, because there's always going to be that one person, even in this subdivision, which was very small. I think it was like 11 houses.
Yes.
11 houses. There was one person that's just adamantly did not want, to go on. So I think this one, I had one other one the same way that had one person, and both times they said, for the benefit of the whole subdivision, I'll go along, but I really don't want to spend that money. But, they ended up going along. So, and the good thing about this one, like Dale said, is it is right there on Perdita Bay, and the people are very environmentally friendly in this neighborhood. They knew that their septic tanks were failing, and they knew they were leaking into Perdita Bay. So that was, I thought it was a very wonderful thing for them to agree to go along. So thank you, Mr. Hayden. Ms. Benson.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that Mr. Hayden doesn't have all of this on the top of his head is we just haven't been successful in doing this. I know of only one case where we had a true neighborhood-initiated sewer expansion, and that was over by the Pensacola Country Club.
Uh-huh.
I think it's something that we need to revisit to see how we can do more things like this. I mean, this was relatively affordable, and it makes perfect sense with our priorities, with the neighborhood priorities, and maybe our policy sets too high a bar. And we ought to do everything we can to accommodate these when it's feasible. So I hope it's something that we can revisit later. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schneier.
So the entire cost for this program is $115,700. How much of that are these 8 customers paying? Or are they paying on top of that? And how is it just rolled into their bill, or are they collecting thousands of dollars at once in a pot and contributing?
I'll let Stacy articulate, but it's a little of both.
For this project, the customers aren't required to pay anything. This is an ECUA-sponsored sewer expansion project, so connections will be provided for each customer at each lot. The impact fee will be waived for a period of 1 year. After that 1 year period, they would be subject to pay the impact fee, but that would be the only cost from a connection standpoint that the customer would have to make. In this instance, because it is low pressure, each customer is going to be required to purchase and install a grinder pump to pump their sewage into our system. And that could be, that has an order of magnitude of $5,000 to $8,000, and that would include, approximate amount. That would include the purchase of the grinder pump and installation, as well as abandonment of their septic system.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins?
And another reason that we have kind of high percentage for approval on some of it is, in some areas, septic tanks work just fine. I mean, they're, the land's high, they've got good drainage lines, there's plenty of property. The people don't want an ECUA sewer bill, and we'll fight it, if they're in that situation. We don't want to get in a situation where you've got a neighborhood where there's 80% of the people have good working septic tanks, and there's 20% of the rich folks live right down by the water, and theirs don't work, and they want to get on sewer, and they make the whole neighborhood, the other 80%, have to get rid of perfectly functioning septic tanks and install a sewer system. So that's part of the reason that we have it in there. If you have people down here and you've got a bunch of people opposed to spending money in a neighborhood, we got plenty of places to spend the money. So we have to have certain thresholds. We don't want to just go in and mandate that everybody that has a working septic tank has to get rid of it because you got a few influential people that want the sewer system in that area.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Not to belabor the point, so in the areas that I have walked through that have been pointed out to me by Mr. Williams, I know that some of these, I can't confirm that they need new sewer, but looking at the cost that these individual residents would incur, I would say 75%, if we use that benchmark, 75% of these individuals that I am working with, that I'm representing, would not be able to handle that type of cost. So my question is twofold. Is there a way to offset that, or is there ways to bring in other funding to assist them with paying for that? And then the second question is, with respect to the neighborhoods, getting those individuals to understand how that process works. Is there some tool that I can use to help them understand all of the nuances in trying to make this happen?
I love your questions, Mr. Brown. And yes, sir, we do a certain amount of septic to sewer conversion each year, and as a board. And we are working right now on Navy Point still? Yeah, in the Navy Point area. And again, it's, our criteria is close to the waterway, failing, and public safety. So still, those areas in your district or whoever's district need to be brought to attention. I brought an area to the attention of staff this morning. So with this kind of procedure where they have to, have to buy the low pressure system, I agree with you that a lot of people might not do this. I've initiated 3 of these, and only 2 have gone through. This one and Pine Forest Road.
Yes, ma'am.
And which is a little loop off of Pine Forest Highway. But the other one did not go through because they did not want to pay for the grinder pumps. And so that was Paradise Beach. And so that's still in need, yes. And so I brought it to the attention of staff, and I'm sure down the road it'll be one of those subdivisions that gets in line for our septic to sewer conversion money that we spend each year, if that makes sense.
But
Yes, ma'am, that does make sense. To follow up with that, so those individuals who are a little bit averse to doing that, but then you're looking at the possibility of some type of almost system-wide failure because there's so many who fall into this category. Maybe at some point I can just speak with someone, because I'm trying to think of the verbiage that I need to use with the individuals who are asking these questions. But the first thing that they say, well, we can't afford to pay for it, but we need it. So I'm trying to provide them with a working answer, and to give them all of the pros and cons of why it can be done and how we can assist them in getting it done.
Yeah, I would suggest speaking with Stacy, Hayden, and Bruce Woody, and they can come up with a way to help you express that need, that message to them.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And
Mr. Perkins.
we have done quite a few where there's no out-of-pocket cost to the citizens. It's a gravity system. But what we have determined is not because we're doing it a favor to those citizens, it's because we figure that it's in the interest of public health and safety based on the criteria of it's adjacent to area surface water. So we think it's worth us spending our ratepayers' money to protect our surface waters and keep our environment clean around here. We think it's worth us spending our ratepayers' money to protect the water supply so they're not drinking water that has sewage sucking into the well. So we'll pay for that. This other criteria is we think it's worth our ratepayers' money to not have children going to the hospital spreading disease because they're getting contaminated by sewage on their way to school, walking through the yards. So there are criteria, and those criteria are real important, where we will pay for it, but it's because we think it's in the public interest, not because we think Uncle Bubba is going to put a subdivision in there and make an extra $10,000 a home because it's got a sewer system, rather than him having to pay for septic tanks or have septic tanks.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Brown.
I will say that I'm getting a lot of information that I can actually use when I go back out there. I do appreciate that, and I would really like to sit down with someone and maybe include Mr. Williams on that, because I've got a ton of questions. On the one hand, I don't want to think the residents, a portion of them believe, well, it's because it's us, we're not going to get it and we're not going to get any assistance. I firmly do not believe that, but I have no basis, nothing that I can show them on paper to show that there is a system in place that would help take care of you, but you've got to do your part. Don't want to do the handout, but I don't want them to think that we're not thinking about them at the same time. Thank you very much for your answers.
Well, what I would encourage staff to do is to get some of the sewage projects that Mr. McCorvey got through, because he got some in some areas that really needed it, show those to the people from that district, and that's kind of, they can follow, why reinvent the wheel? You can follow kind of his example or stuff, but that will let the other people know that, hey, yeah, people like us in poor areas that really need this can get this because it's happened before. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, so if you can have that data to present to them, it will help.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Williams. Sorry, you keep coming up as Louise.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Board Member Perkins and Mr. Brown. There is no greater need as we talk in District 3, and I've made this very clear to everyone involved, the ECUA staff, that sewer is a priority for the citizens in District 3. Many times, as Dr. Walker was speaking about what makes the democracy work, it appears that it caters those who can afford it now versus those who cannot, or those who may have a louder voice than those who do not. And I don't want that perception to be one that goes forward for District 3. So if nothing else, the projects that are listed as having been approved, i.e. Airway, is that we fiscally fund those and break ground to get them done. That would be a way for me to go back to the residents of District 3 and say, there is a method, there is a way to get septic to sewer or sewer done in your area, especially if it's been tasked and approved as a future project. then let's put a date on it so that we can break ground, get it done, and move on to other areas and go about that process for other citizens. But right now, that's not what I have seen with the airway project, for example. So if we can, give me some concrete information to take back to residents in District 3 concerning airway in Inslee, that would be very much appreciated.
May I
Yes, sir,
respond?
Mr.
Airway Stockdale, we have completed the design for that project. We were competing funding-wise with several other projects, one being the Beach Haven area projects. With Navy Point area, the Airway Stockdale project is going to be in excess of $5 million. That's a rather large sewer expansion project, and I've given direction that we need to split that up over 2 or so fiscal years because that's a big hit to our budget. And so that's one aspect of it. The Beach Haven projects, the Navy Point sewer expansion projects, those are projects where we are trying to team up with Escambia County. When they have a drainage project, we coordinate with them quite a bit, but sometimes we're not the ones to say go. Whenever the county says go, it could be related to grant funds that they get that we don't have access to. So when they get access to grant funds from CRA, CDBG, and things like that, sometimes that spills over to ECUA. So we have to jump on those opportunities if we want to get sewer expansion at a much cheaper cost per connection. And so that was the instance here in the last couple of years. We had Beach Haven Phase 1. We've got Beach Haven Phase 2, which was bid, but the county rejected bids, and they're splitting that up into 2 phases because of the cost. We will eventually be part of that construction contract, and we have money budgeted for that. So that part will be good, but just, we're pushing forward as fast as we can. Construction costs are going up significantly. I want to say that we've gotten some bids that I'm hearing contractors say that costs are 30 to 40% more for materials. That's going to impact how much we can do moving forward. So we may have to come back and further revise the budget for the Airway Stockdale project in particular. That one, to me, is special is because that was Mr. McCorvey's area. That was one thing that he wanted to see happen before he passed away. So that one's, somewhat near and dear to me to get done because he was such a strong supporter of that, and it needs to be done. Other areas that have a strong need, Brownsville, we applied for a grant. We applied for a $6 million grant. Out of that $6 million, we were successful in getting $250,000. That doesn't go very far, but we at ECUA, our board, approved a budget of, I think the last budget maybe several years ago was $685,000. And we are going to couple that with the $250,000 to do whatever we can in the Brownsville community to extend that gravity sewer system over there. So we have a huge need with limited funding for sewer expansion. We have a huge need with limited funding for rehab upgrades to our current system, and it's just competing priorities. And I understand greatly the need for sewer expansion, but we do have, all these older pipes, and essentially we got to balance taking care of what we got now that is extremely old. I'm talking 50, 70, 80 years old, with the needs moving forward and that sewer expansion that, hey, failing septic tanks, I get it. We definitely want to protect the environment, but we've got so many competing needs to balance those out. So, long-winded answer to a pretty straightforward question, but Airway Stockdale, that's one that I agree. We need to move forward with it. We're trying to find a way to do that as soon as possible. So,
And I think a lot of the failing areas are in lower income subdivisions or areas. I mean, I have some in my district as well. We were talking about Carondelet this morning, which is very poor subdivision area in my district. And so everybody has little pockets in their districts that are in more need than others. And it's just I would say first thing would be get with the citizens, get with staff, then maybe get with Mr. May, who is your district commissioner, and see what he's willing to do to help and, or, do with you. And then work with the legislators as well and let them know your needs. So it's kind of a whirlwind of how to get it.
Okay, thank
to
you.
sewer.
If I could add, because you mentioned the legislators, that I don't know what will exactly become of the legislation, federal legislation now about infrastructure projects, but I know we fit the criteria with wastewater systems. So anticipating that there will be legislation for infrastructure, that we start competing now so that when that comes down the pipe, we're able to get monies and directly coming into areas that need it the most. I understand money as far as how we get our resources. This is an opportunity to get money that we normally would not have for needs that we have. And everybody in District 3, from the commission, all the way down to citizens, understand the need and are willing to contribute towards the results. But if we could help ourselves in that respect, I'll be your champion to say that we're working on it, we've got dates on it, and that within the scope of what we can do, we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know how hard you're working. Thank you.
Oh, no, sir, not at all.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, I would do that. Reach out to Mr. May, reach out to your legislator and say, I want to make sure this gets done and try to get some funding for it. I know that I'm over there in Tallahassee. I've seen Miss Benson in Tallahassee begging for money, so. All right. So, we have not voted. No more questions? Please vote on item F. One small piece of the problem will be resolved, and it passes 11-0. We move now to item G, adoption of General Resolution GR 21-22, a general resolution authorizing Executive Director to execute a contract with Brown Construction of Northwest Florida, Inc., the low bidder, for the Tarragona 12-inch water main relocation project, authorizing the transfer of project funds and provide an effective date. It's on page 14. Do I have a motion?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Do I have a second to get it on the board, Mr. Williams?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion, questions? Ms. Benson?
Yeah, can you tell me how long this project's going to take?
Mr. Woody? Oh, sorry, Mr. Hayden.
Yes, ma'am, I assume the question was going to come to me. I anticipate it's going to be no longer than 90 days, especially once construction actually starts. The method of construction is going to be a jack and bore, which is trenchless, which goes fairly quickly. So I would anticipate that once construction starts, 90 days. It may take them a month or two to get materials. Yeah.
May I follow?
Yes.
Will there be interruption of service during this time?
I'm sorry, I
Will there
missed-
be service interrupted during this time?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yeah, can you just explain trenchless method?
Oh, good question.
That's a good one for this one.
Mr. Hayden.
And it may be a little bit misleading when I say trenchless. So the main portion of the installation of the water line will be somewhat tunneled in under the roadway, but there will be trenches dug on either side of that tunneling device. It's called a jack and bore, is what we normally refer to it as. So there will be trenches dug on either side and then trenches dug to connect the water main in. But the biggest part of this project was that we needed to do trenchless to keep that roadway open. right there. So there are other methods as well, but when we refer to trenchless, it means that for the majority part of it, it's going to be tunneled in some way, shape, or form.
Great question. Mr. Woody?
Trenchless technologies are usually done for one of two reasons. One, either to try to save money because what's above ground is very expensive to replace, and we don't want to disturb it, or or like the reasons, or if it's like, say, a very busy road, it's very disruptive to traffic. Other times, it can actually be less expensive. It kind of depends on the option or what's going on. But essentially, it's a means to place something underground without having to dig an open trench as an alternative.
Thank you. No further questions, please vote. And it passes 11-0. We move now to adoption of General Resolution GR 21-23. It's on page 19 of your agenda. It's a general resolution authorizing the issuance of a sole source annual emergency services contract for sewer hauling and vacuum tanker services for the Emerald Coast Utilities Authority facilities and infrastructure. Do I have a motion to get it on the table? Mr. Kimball.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Mr. Stevens.
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Do I have questions? Comments? If not, please vote. And it passes 11-0. We move now to item I, adoption of and it passes 10-0. That's wrong. Someone, do I have? Okay, we need to reset.
Sometimes when I notice when I press this thing,
Yeah.
I might press it 2 or 3 times before it actually fills in.
I do too. Yeah, it's a tricky system. Everybody, no? Everybody make sure your green is all filled in. We got it.
Are we waiting? Got them all now?
And there we go, and it passes 11-0. There's also, should be, here you go. Do you have one of these?
No, that was.
Okay. I got one on the end of my pen, and they work really well. And we used to have them on at every station.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so maybe we could order some more of these, because they really do work well. I might get some of those with my name on it and pass it out. Did it pop up 11?
Yes.
Okay, 11-0. All right, we move now to item I, which is adoption of General Resolution number GR 21-24 on page 23 of your agenda. A general resolution authorizing acceptance of bid and awarding of a contract, authorizing executive director to execute a contract with Automation Control Service LLC of Pensacola, the low bidder, for $101,820 to provide a system control panel and variable frequency drive, along with associated integration, coordination, and study at the 9-mile booster pump, authorizing the use of funds from CIP budget. Do I have a motion? Ms. Benson?
Move the resolution.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I have a second? Mr. Brown?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments? If not, please vote. Mr. Williams, is yours sponged? Up, and it passes 11-0. Move now to item J, adoption of General Resolution GR 21-25 on page 27 of your agenda. A general resolution authorizing the sole source purchase of new valve insertion equipment from Consolidated Pipe Supply Company, Inc. in the amount of $67,105.68 for the Regional Services Department. Do I have a motion? Ms. Benson?
Move the resolution.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Do I have any questions? Ms. Benson?
No, sorry.
Mr. Williams?
Yeah, can Stacy or someone explain how this equipment is used
Yes,
in
sir.
active water or sewer mains?
Yes, sir. Ms. Palmer's coming up. Oh, sorry.
I'm Brian Reed, Director of Regional Services. It's for my department. Basically, this equipment is used if we have a live water main or a live force main. If conventional method would be to cut the pipe, shut the water down, cut the pipe, install the new valve, and that would disrupt service for customers. And in some situations, that's okay. In others, we don't, there's too many customers that would be disrupted, or, in the case of a sewage force main, there may not be a place for that flow to go. So this equipment allows us to install the valve without shutting the main down, and so service isn't disrupted to customers. Did you want a more technical answer than that?
I don't need more of a technical answer. I have a follow-up.
Yes, sir.
question.
Follow up.
And that would be, Romac is the equipment provider,
Yes, sir.
and it's kind of interesting, but how do you get to be a sole source provider?
Well, the sole source provider is Consolidated Pipes Supply.
Right.
And Romac is the equipment that we've been using for about 25 years. We've got a lot of experience with it. We've got equipment already that this equipment will be interchangeable with. So Romac has determined that, or they've awarded Consolidated Pipe the sole source rights to sell their product in this area.
Okay,
So that's how it becomes a sole source.
okay. Are there any other competitors besides?
There's some competing equipment. There are only two that are approved for usage by our engineering manual, and this is the one that we've found to be the best product.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Good questions, by the way, Mr. Williams. Please vote. And we missed one. Oh, Miss Dean left. Okay. So it passes 10-0. Mr. Kirschner is no longer with us. We move now to item K, page 31, adoption of General Resolution GR 2126, a general resolution to approve a proposal and issue a purchase order to Elamec Inc. for upgrades to Portalogic automated hardware and software system for the septic hauler access station at the Central Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $77,864. Do I have a motion? Mr. Kimball?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
I'll second the recommendation.
Mr. Kimball, you have a question?
I do. Is there any, like annual maintenance to this hardware or software, rather? Or is it just a one-time purchase and we're done?
This is a combination of hardware and software. While we do have maintenance for upgrades to software as new versions come out. The problem here, this particular version is no longer being supported, as is much of frustration in many businesses. It seems like things are only supported for a certain period of time, and then something else new comes out. I don't know whether that's planned by, by the manufacturer or just how that works sometimes. But we've been having problems with the software locking up or having processing errors from time to time. It's aged out and isn't supported, so we do need to upgrade to the to the next version of the software. And then we'll continue to have support over a period of time with the new software until they choose not to support it again, I suppose.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. I've been held hostage by Paperport for 25 years, you know, somebody come up with a new one, but I just have to keep getting patched up and get the new version all the time. Good question, Mr. Kimball. Mr. Williams?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Can you explain how the PortalLogic, how the system works itself? What are we paying for?
There comes Don.
I'd
Y'all
like to see-
messed with me today. You both had on checkered shirts and changed sides of the room.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, the PortalLogic software is for portalet companies. That's what it was made for. And so it is used at the Central Water Reclamation Facility. There's quite a system set up that for the haulers to come in, they register, they state, we're only going to take our rules, we're only going to take it from Escambia and Santa Rosa County. They get a transponder, and the first part of the software looks at the transponders. They drive up to the gate, opens the gate, they come in, they come to the scales. We know what time they come into the gate, they come into the scales. It records the truck number, they go onto the scales, they go discharge the septage, they go back to the scales, we get an outweight, that gives us a volume to charge them with, and then they leave the plant. And this software tracks those transactions and creates a bill essentially for the septage haulers and lets us know, keeps a database of all the transactions.
So kind of a paperless billing program.
It was, I think, originally set up for unmanned places, and but we use it at the central to control the gate access, to control the scales, and how it gets recorded, and producing invoices and bills.
Okay, thanks. So
Thank you.
the total upgrade is what we're talking about, a hardware and software to make this system current. And I guess, how long did the other system work or last? Can we?
It was installed, I believe, in 2012 when we did the septage program, so it's about 9 years old.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any further questions? If not, please vote. And it passes 10-0. We move now to item L, adoption of General Resolution GR 21-27, a general resolution to establish a new project and authorize a proposal for engineering services by Mott McDonald in the amount of $133,088 for design efforts related to arc flash analysis and breaker coordination at 33 water well and/or booster pump locations. Do I have a motion to get this on the table? Ms. Benson?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second? Mr. Kimball? Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Mr. Williams?
Question. I thought we had 31 water wells, so I guess so many of those water wells are bad, and I don't know how many booster pumps do we have, and can we talk about the operation of booster pumps?
Yes, sir.
How do they contribute to water well process operation?
First, let me give you a little bit of further background on this particular contract. Throughout our system, we have many of our systems that are controlled by by systems that are very technical in nature. The electrical systems, anywhere from small horsepower, 5 to 10, all the way up to hundreds of horsepower systems. So we have quite a few locations, whether it be water wells, lift stations, booster pumps, and various other components throughout the system that have these types of high voltage, high amperage motor control systems, variable frequency drives, et cetera. And because of that, there's a very intense need to be sure that we remain compliant with the electrical code, to be sure that we aren't putting our equipment, and more importantly, our employees, as well as contractors working in that area, for safety concerns. Arc flash is a situation where you have energy that leaves the intended path and makes jumps literally through the air to other pieces of equipment, and can create really explosive situations. Not to mention, certainly could actually electrocute an individual if they were within distance of it. So we have quite a bit of older equipment that we haven't done this sort of thing in for a while, and we feel like we're overdue for studying some of our older equipment, identifying locations where there's potential for arc flash, rating the equipment based on electrical code criteria so that when somebody works on it, they know what the risk issues are, and identify those locations that might even need to be upgraded altogether. Now back to your question, you asked about booster pump stations, I think was your particular question.
Yes, sir. I know, or I was told we have 31 wells, 33 wells/booster pumps are going to receive this upgrade, and I was wanting to know the number of wells versus booster pumps, and how the booster pump works with the wells for doing this job.
Okay. You have 31 wells. I don't know that I know the number of, do you know the number of booster pump stations? I don't know that I can quote that number off the top of my head.
3.
Okay.
At least 3 or 4. And booster pumps supplement the system, not even necessarily right where a well location, usually they're out in the system, and help increase system pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, mainly, we're referring to where we have a ground storage tank, such as Pensacola Beach, Carriage Hills, Southwest tank, where we fill a ground storage tank and then we pump out of that ground storage tank with what we call booster pumps. They pump into the system like a well would, but they're pumping out of a tank instead of the groundwater.
Thank you.
And so those are the main booster tank
Yep.
situations we have.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? If not, please vote. Great questions, Mr. Williams. You know, some people, the longer you're on here, you know answers, and you don't think about those questions. And I like when you ask those questions because it gives our new CAC members a lot of information, and that's very good. Passes 10-0. We move now to informational reports on pages 44 through 114, fiscal year capital improvement program budget, the water production report, water reclamation report. Mr. Perkins, I see your light on.
I'd just like to advise all the new members to take a real good look at page 44 over the next month. That's the capital improvement projects. That's the projects that we are planning in the upcoming time. And if you look back, each one has a special sheet for it. It tells when it's proposed to be funded, what's currently funded in the past, and there's just a lot of information in there. Now, at the end of the year, when we do our budget, if you turn to page 46, that's where all the projects are. We will go down and look what we can fund, and then we will draw a line. If your project's above that line, it's scheduled for funding next year. If it's not scheduled for funding. What determines that? Well, a lot of times we do. You know, and that's dependent on what we finance through the bond market. Maybe we can refinance some stuff. what the current construction market is, what supplies are for certain, certain of these projects. Maybe prices may be good, certain ones may not, but we have to weigh all that, and then we have to decide, do we want to do a bond issue to fund some of this? Do we want to raise rates just a little bit to fund that bond issue, or do we want to raise rates a bunch to fund these projects out of that rate increase? So that is where we always get the rub being a board member. You've got the pressure of the citizens that, hey, we don't want any rate increases, no matter what. And not only do we have to approve rate increases for funding capital improvements, as our operational costs go up, the only way for us to cover that is through rate increases. Now, if I'm a county commissioner or a city council person with all this development going on and all these property values going through the roof, they got plenty of money without doing a rate increase because the property values are increasing so quickly around here. So they don't have to do a rate increase, and they'll have plenty of money and say, we didn't increase your rates. Of course, the property appraiser increased those values, and it went way up. But if we are going to cover our operational cost, the only way we can do that is through rate increases. And if we're going to finance capital projects, we're going to have to do rate increases either with a bond issue or through rate increases. So that's where the pain is. Because when we start talking rate increases, we got everybody coming in here screaming, my rates are too high. And then they come in and they scream, we don't have adequate infrastructure, but I still want my rates low. So that's what you have to, you weigh, when we vote on all this. So I'd encourage everybody, particularly the new people, but all of us, to read very thoroughly this capital improvements project budget and all these individual items and identify the ones that are important to you and see whether or not it's feasible to get them above the line and at what level of funding you want to participate in. Because everything you fund is going to be nice, for your area and for the people you want it, but it's also going to be painful for the people who have to pay it, and you have to justify that with them.
Thank you, Dale. Mr. Kimball.
Well, maybe for perspective, do we know how much of a CIP we funded last year for our budget that we can share with everybody?
I don't have it off the top of my head. I want to say it was in the 46, 31?
31 is staff saying.
Oh, for some reason, I was thinking it was more.
It was 29.
Oh, yeah, that's because last year we did not raise rates. Mr. Perkins?
And Mr. Stevens brought up a very good issue at an earlier meeting, and that's that interest rates are low right now, historically low. They may not ever be lower. We've got some debt that we typically will refinance over time. We might have an opportunity to do that. And so it may be that we're able to do, it might be worth doing a bond issue. We'll have to look at it and analyze it. It may not be. But it might be worth doing a bond issue now while the rates are low, because I got a feeling we're going to see some inflation in interest rates. I'm not a market genius or anything like that, or I'd probably have another job. But I got a feeling that we may not have too many more opportunities to get really good interest rates on infrastructure. Of course, we may have some federal funds that we can access, which would be really nice. But the flip side of that is construction costs are so high now that is it worth doing that? Are there, and I don't know how the finance people have to tell us this, but are we able to do a bond issue and not start paying on it, lock the rates but not start paying on it until we actually expend those monies? Or is that rate such that, once we lock it in, we've got to start covering that? So those are all complex questions that we'll have to be looking at, but it's something to be thinking about. We've got infrastructure needs. We've got certain financial conditions in the world that may work to our benefit or not to our benefit, but we will need help from the expertise both on the committee and from our staff and our financial advisors on what would be the best way to proceed to fund the infrastructure. But that's where you always get the conflict is when you start talking about rates.
Thank you. I noticed all the acronyms on page 45, and I have two of my own that I add as I go through these little pages, each one of is it a strong want or a strong need? And the strong needs always move to the top of my little list, and the wants, I have to try to help explain why I can't vote for that. So just things to be thinking about as we move into that cycle. Thank you very much, Mr. Perkins, for that. I like the share of information that we have going on today. So I got out of order here. We move now to unfinished business. And the first one I had was, where are we on the efforts to hire drivers and day labor? I know that we are working with the Perdido Chamber on one issue, and I know we've got a couple other things going on, so, Mr. Woody?
Yeah, our biggest challenges at the moment are really day laborers more than anything else. We use day laborers out of a local labor, part-time labor company that we utilize for folks who do our yard waste collection. Typically, we have 2 on every truck, and we have about 15 routes that we run daily. And then we also have one on each of 5 different bulk pickup trucks also that assist. And then we also use day laborers out at the MRF operations. And we're just having continuous problems trying to get sufficient folks. You may remember reading in the board report from last week that there were several days where we either started an hour late or had routes running with only 1 on the back instead of 2, which slows down production, of course. And we had to work a little over half of Saturday in order to get caught up for that week. That will get worse before it gets better, because right now we're in the most intense time of the year in terms of people getting out and doing their spring cleaning, and temperatures are cool, and a lot of activity going out in yards. Now, once temperatures rise, there'll be a little bit less volume to pick up, but a competing problem is that as it gets warm, we get fewer and fewer day laborers willing to do very labor-intensive, difficult work for all day. So it makes it even more difficult for us to get labor. So that's a challenge. Randy Rudd and his staff have made several recommendations for consideration. He and I are still discussing those, and they really run the gamut from, and we're trying to brainstorm any and every option, regardless whether it's a good one or a bad one. You got to get it out on the table first, and then go to it from there. Short term, it's a matter of hoping the situation improves, as always one option. But second from that would be to perhaps try to staff up and actually hire ECUA staff as opposed to having a day laborer type of operation. While that would help to some degree, it would also put a tremendous burden on our HR department, and because of the turnover that would still continue. While it may not be at as high a rate, there still would be tremendous turnover, so I'm not sure how much of an improvement that would or wouldn't be. We made investments with the support of the board on the prototype truck. The good news about that is it's coming very close to production. As of about 2 weeks ago, they said it was less than a week to 2 weeks away. And then just last week, he got a call and said, no, it's going to be more like 4 to 6. So we're getting conflicting information, but at least it's coming closer. But if that works well, then that's certainly a good option. But that is also a major investment in the turnaround for ordering a number of those is certainly every bit of next season or beyond. And the worst of all the options, of course, but it still always needs to be discussed, would be to reduce service levels to compete with, to match the amount of staff we're able to provide. That's certainly something I would want to avoid. MRF operations are somewhat similar. We have talked with some additional staffing agencies. There is an outfit called Lead Point that Randy's been talking with that provides staffing for MRFs, kind of unique. But that's about $150,000 more a year than what we're currently paying through our service provider, our labor provider. Again, another option could be to hire more ECUA employees. I don't think the turnover would be quite as bad at the MRF that it is in the others, so that might be a more reasonable option there. And then lastly would be to make additional investments in robots. We've had really good success with the ones that we've purchased so far. While those robots are effective for primarily plastics and to some degree light paper, and it doesn't work with many of the other materials, but the company that we have purchased robots for in the past are still offering their 0% interest loans, so that's a nice option. But that would probably be as much as a $2 million investment if you were to purchase 8 additional robots at that location. And they would still probably want to have some additional ECUA staff on top of that. So that's what we're taking a look at as a part of our budget recommendations. Some of those would probably initiate certainly in the current budget year, but others might be a capital investment for the following year.
Thank you. The second thing on unfinished business was CAC emails. I think you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, I had mentioned at our last meeting, in fact, there's some, you can flip back to the notes that you approved from our last meeting. I requested and reminded and provided everybody on the CAC board that each of you have been assigned an actual ECUA email. And we've been using that email address to send you information. I believe most, if not almost all of you are using that email address. We did get a few inquiries in the time since the last meeting for a few people that either forgotten to initiate it or have still been relying on their personal email to have correspondence with us. We want to be sure that you not miss anything. So please do program that email into your phone or your computer and do use that. If you don't have the information we provided before, we do have the email information and passport information that we can talk to you about after the meeting.
And I apologize, Mr. Williams.
Yes, thank you. Just to Mr. Woody, the prototype truck, I'm not sure what type of truck that is.
Oh, that predates your time on the board when that was ordered. Right now, the type of truck that we use for bulk pickup has a kind of a roll-off looking container on the back. It's sliced at a bit of an angle to allow room for a knuckle boom kind of a crane that's also connected on the same vehicle. So the operator can swivel that around, drop a clamshell crane bucket to pick up the couch or the white goods, whatever the item is, and put that into the roll-off container in the back of the vehicle. But it's just placed there literally by gravity. We just drop it into the back, and when it fills up, it's full. Sometimes we can get, or most of the time, we could get more put into those containers if we had the ability to actually compact or press down our load, and that would reduce the frequency of them having to get off the route and run to the landfill to discharge. So this prototype truck has those additional capabilities. It allows you to not only have the convenience of having the knuckle boom type of arrangement, but also you can apply some compactive effort and put more load on each pickup. We have one prototype under construction that we've kind of spec'd, and we look forward to putting it into service.
Thank you. And I'd like to add on the CAC emails or board emails, if you have one, or if you want that put on your iPad or your cell phone or any of your computer, laptop or big computer, you can call John Dane and he can walk you through it on the phone. So it's pretty simple. So he has to do it for me when I change phones or change computers or work from home or work from work. And then the third thing there was update on the East Tank for unfinished business.
East Tank, as you know, is under construction.